specific applications. I want to share this idea that I have that's setting the stage. I'm gonna use different terms today, and I want to create a differentiation between 3D printing and additive manufacturing. I think most people that are probably on this session today are familiar with 3D printing and have seen desktop printers that may use plastic filament to heat it up, extrude it, and build parts, similar to how a hot glue gun works. And so that's 3D printing the way that I think about it. And then today we're going to talk about additive manufacturing, and it's a little bit different. It uses some of the same technology, but for additive manufacturing, we're really talking about operating 3D printing technology in a very tightly controlled environment where we're controlling all of our inputs, like the materials, the environmental conditions, the humidity, the product design or the part designs. And we're doing that so that we can produce parts at scale that are consistent and of the same quality. And for anybody that's ever been familiar with a filament-based 3D printer, having consistent high-quality parts that come out every time is not typically the way it works. So we're controlling all of these variables to get consistent quality. So that's how I'll be talking about additive manufacturing at scale today. And then going a little bit more broad picture, in a lot of cases, we're using additive manufacturing to displace or complement existing technologies. In the context of the conversation today, I'm going to be referencing molding, primarily injection molding, as well as machining. So as we see it, these are three manufacturing methods that come together and complement each other for the production of parts. And like anything else, each technology or each manufacturing method has its strengths and weaknesses. I hear a lot of questions about additive manufacturing. Now, it's come a long way. It's really advanced. Is it cheaper than injection molding? That's a common question I receive. And we're not there yet anyway. So I created this heat map, so to speak, in comparing each of these manufacturing methods against each other in terms of flexibility, extent of digitization. And what I mean by that is how quickly can we change designs or details about parts we're manufacturing, the innovation potential, the responsiveness, the part cost, and throughput. In green, which would be the highest green would be a 10, is the best, and a 1 would be the worst, which would be in the red category. So what this starts to paint is a picture of where there are strengths and weaknesses for each of these manufacturing methods. And you'll see in this conversation, and then how we talk generally, additive manufacturing is not a solution for all problems. It's a tool that we can use in our tool chest, but it doesn't solve everything. And there's a place for each of these manufacturing methods. In many cases, they work together in projects that we're embarking on, where we're using machining alongside molding, alongside additive. And it's all about finding where each method fits best for the particular project or the part within a project to serve your needs. So I am not of the belief that additive manufacturing is going to replace machining and molding. You'll see that most of my mindset is that it complements it and it enables accelerated product launches as a complement, not necessarily a replacement. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. To set the stage a little bit more, I'm going to talk about different types of materials. And we work with metals and polymers. Typically for metal 3D printing, we're working with powder as the raw material. And for polymers, we're working with powder, liquid resin, and then filament. So each of these materials are raw inputs, so to speak, and we're converting those into finished parts with the manufacturing method. Most of what I'm talking about today, actually all of what I'm talking about today, is in the polymer category, but I'm happy to answer questions about metal 3D printing as well. So the types of applications The way that I think about it and what I'll be talking about today is they kind of fall in two categories. One is incremental use of additive manufacturing, and that is using it to augment traditional methods through the product life cycle, which is what I've shown here. In traditional product life cycles, you've got these phases of development where the product is being developed and refined. You've got the introduction to the market, which is where you're typically capturing your early adopters. You're starting to ramp up production and acceptance. And then with the growth stage, you're getting even more adoption. This phase of the curve is typically steeper. You're bringing in your later adopters. You've got the maturity stage in a product life cycle where you start to perhaps run out the technology that you've developed. There's more competitors coming to the space, and then the acceptance or demand for that product falls over time. And then you've got the decline where the product is no longer prominent in the marketplace and it's in decline. So each of these stages I've captured where you could use additive manufacturing to complement traditional methods. Of course, in the development stage, using additive for prototyping is pretty common. In the introduction, using additive as a manufacturing resource for the initial production while you're having your tooling made, if you're injection molding parts, additive manufacturing can be a great resource to producing parts at scale. The same for the growth stage. As you're expanding your production, additive can be a great resource to complement traditional machining and molding methods. Oftentimes in the maturity stage where you're in the process of refining and lowering costs, additive is a great resource for manufacturing aids, specifically jigs and fixtures. And then finally, as the product declines, using additive as an on-demand repair supply resource, we found to be quite beneficial. Rather than hanging an injection molded tool and producing 100 parts, additive manufacturing can produce those parts on demand. And if you only need 1 or 2 or 10, this manufacturing method can produce those without capital implications. So that's the incremental use case for additive manufacturing. Now I'm going to share something that's a little bit different. It's transformational. So I've got a couple examples that I'll talk about today, but this video does a much better job than I could do in explaining what transformational use of additive manufacturing is.
Carl, I'm sorry if there's audio, we're not hearing it.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any audio either.
The audio didn't come through. Well, I'm going to keep a digital mindset and I'm going to keep moving. So what that video was about was using additive manufacturing instead of injection molding, where injection molding, you cut one tool, you design a product for thousands or hundreds or millions of customers, and you've got to find where you can meet 80% of that client base or customer base with a particular design. With additive manufacturing, we can go to market and launch one product, get market feedback after that product, and then start to create variations of the product that we can then manufacture on demand with additive manufacturing. And rather than having one tool that creates a million of the same part, we can have this dynamic product platform that creates a million different parts that are all derivatives of a core product, for example. And I've got an example where I'll share a real life example of this in today's talk. My apologies for the video for the video audio not coming through. The clicker here isn't progressing. I'm speaking to our production team here. Thank you. So as we're thinking about the incremental use of additive manufacturing and how we're using it in terms of volumes of parts that are produced through the traditional product life cycle, I've captured some of those volumes here, where in the introduction phase, we're typically producing parts in the hundreds or thousands using additive manufacturing. In the growth stage, this may increase where we're producing parts upwards of 10,000. And then as that scale continues on and we're looking at jigs and fixtures, the volume is generally quite low, anywhere from 1 to hundreds of tools. And then typically on the repair side, it can be onesie, twosie, it can be hundreds or even thousands of parts that we're producing using additive manufacturing. So I'll talk about each of these today, with the exception of on-demand repair. Starting with additive for initial production, this is kind of a neat project. This was a aeroponic basket initiative where a client came to us and wished to have an organic aeroponic basket solution. In this case, it was specifically for lettuce, later adapted to other produce. But the solution that they were using wasn't organic. So there were specific stipulations that they needed to meet for this basket to meet organic requirements. So we set out to develop a product for them. We went through a series of 10 rapid iterations of about 16,000 baskets that we produced. Each iteration was a full growth cycle for the lettuce. So each iteration was about 1,600 baskets. We produced a particular design and then deployed those baskets into produce production so that we could test how the basket design resulted in better or worse produce growth. In total, we produced over about 25,000 baskets. And the outcome of that was, it's like we achieved the organic objective, but on top of that, we had other wins. One of those is that we were able to increase the produce yields by about 30%. So we had 30% more lettuce grown with the same amount of baskets and seedlings. We had a reduction in the produce growth cycle. So we were growing more lettuce faster. And the whole program went from concept to optimized product within a period of 90 days. And this is a great example of where we deployed, you could call it prototyping, but we deployed prototyping at a massive scale so that we could run through full-scale growth cycles, do data collection, learn from those, and then refine the design. And in this case, not only did we achieve organic growth, but we also achieved a dramatic improvement in crop yields. A great example of where we just couldn't have done that with a lock process like injection molding, very effectively anyway. Moving along to a bridge production application. This one's a little bit different. This is a threaded fitting, and in this case, client came to us and said, look, we've got this threaded fitting that we want to put on one of our pieces of equipment and be able to offer that to our customers as an add-on. But we don't know if there's enough market demand for this. We've heard from a handful of folks, and we don't know how many actually want this. So they were hesitant to cut injection molded tooling, which is how you typically manufacture a component like this. So they wanted to test the market. So they came to us and we essentially took the design file and produced it digitally with additive manufacturing. We produced several hundred of these components that enabled them to take them to the market and then do market demand testing. Through that, we were able to take the product from the design to deliver it to the market in about a week and a half. That involves some a pilot run and quality inspection to make sure that we could achieve the desired function. And then ultimately, they were able to validate the market and then go into injection molding. So this is a great example of where they were able to mitigate the risk of overspending from a capital standpoint, test the market, get a product out there before making that commitment to the tooling. And the photos of the parts here are 3D printed. I've got another example here that I'll share. That's the physical part. And so this was produced with the threaded features built into the part. And while we've got I'll backpedal a little bit. While we've got this camera on zoomed in here, I'll also share an example of some of the lettuce baskets that we produced. They nest similar to solo cups, and that's how we were able to maximize the production efficiency, because these are more expensive than injection molded parts. So we had to devise a method to produce them efficiently so that we could drive the costs as low as possible. Moving along to additive used for jigs and fixtures. A couple of examples here. First, starting with the manufacturing. I'll call it a fixture, but they were adapter sleeves. And in this case, they accompanied a new product launch of corrugated pipe. There was a new profile of corrugation that was developed and launched, and there was a downstream operation of perforating the pipe. And the perforating mechanism was a series of aluminum machined hubs that had knives built in, and so that they would pull the pipe downstream and perforate the pipe while it was being pulled. In fact, I think I can share a video of this. There we go. See if I can do this. There we go. So this video shows that adapter in operation. The pipe profile was different enough that the existing aluminum hubs weren't compatible. They simply weren't working correctly with the new profile. So what we did is 3D scanned the existing hubs, and then produced these plastic adapters that essentially were installed over the aluminum and allowed us to get to the place where we could get back into production. We adapted the aluminum hubs to fit the new profile, and that saved over 12 weeks of delay from going back to machine new aluminum hubs. And initially, it was much less expensive to outfit the plants with this adapter rather than remachining all of the components. And for those in manufacturing or in plastics, the material we used for this was a nylon PA12. And we found it performed quite well in this application. Another example in a similar space of corrugated pipe manufacturing. This was for the same project, so we had a new pipe profile that was different from the previous. And the way that the product is cut in the manufacturing process is by using a hand basically a hand method, a hand blade. And for this particular pipe, the tools that had been existing weren't cutting in the right location every single time. So we identified this quality challenge on a Wednesday, and then by Friday, we were able to implement this new pipe cutting mechanism that was designed specifically for that pipe. So we went from problem on a Wednesday to a solution on a Friday because we deployed digital manufacturing. That was significantly faster than the alternative methods of fabricating or otherwise machining tools to meet this need. What was sort of interesting in this process is that we started to discover some other pains that existed with the traditional blades being exposed and having employee injuries from knife cuts. So through this process of learning and taking the feedback in, we were able to produce the initial tool, take that feedback in, and then iterate it so that we incorporated auto-retracting blades for the remainder of the tools that were deployed company-wide. And just another great example of deploying digital manufacturing that allows you to change on the fly in a way that you might otherwise be restricted from doing so in traditional manufacturing. And a version of this tool is still in use today, so this is something that has been deployed and continues to operate. Now we're going to switch to the transformational side and talk about the use of additive manufacturing for transformational applications. In this case, this is a medical device. I'll make it so it's easier to see what we're focused on here, but this particular device that's not blurry is a heart valve delivery system. And all the parts that you see here in this photo that are standing out a bit are essentially 3D printed, produced using additive manufacturing. And this is a medical device that's used to deploy heart valves. And this video on the right shows us a similar device that's a derivative of a delivery system. And essentially these are handles that have internal mechanisms. You'll see here in this case, there's a linear screw that drives the catheter as it's being used in the operation. In this particular device, there's roughly about 100 different components that have been additively produced through the life cycle of this particular heart valve delivery system. And I kind of get jacked up at this. This shows a simulated view of the heart valve that's being put into place. So the instrument that's placing the heart valve is the instrument that's being driven by the additively manufactured components, the catheter and delivery system. And this has been an application that's been in use for many years, about 5 or 6 years. And through this process, there's been about 44 patient studies done, clinical trials in other words, where the heart valve delivery system has been used with additive manufactured components. And we're producing these in full color. The parts appear to be mass produced, so as they're going into the doctors and surgeons' hands, they don't know that they're 3D printed, which is great because it eliminates some of the false negatives that can occur from products that look like they're prototypes. This has allowed the design team to take surgeon feedback almost in real time from one clinical trial and then make improvements before going into the next clinical trial. So the adaptability that additive manufacturing's opened the door for is remarkable. Obviously, that results in significant flexibility. We found that the color identification on the parts simplifies the instruction for these surgeons that are performing these operations. In some cases, this is the first time they've performed a tricuspid valve replacement using this technology because it's new. And the thing that we hear from our clients is, look, additive manufacturing's enabled our success. If we were using traditional methods, we would have either run out of funding by now, or we would have a technology that isn't nearly as advanced as what we've developed. So I know that we shared a video of this system, but I'll share another close-up here that shows the cross section of the handle with a linear screw, and in this case we've got printed in call outs. These are printed in full color and they're functional, so we're able to include branding and other markings. And this version shows the nut that's used on the linear screw. So this is a very simplified version of what's used in the actual application. With the FDA opening some of the guidelines for the use of additive manufacturing and production components, this has sparked significant innovation, especially in minimally invasive procedures like this, for example. So we're seeing this sort of deployment of additive for these sorts of applications, catheter-based applications, as well as robotic surgical applications. So it is having a significant and real impact on healthcare. We're transitioning from something very serious to something a bit more fun. This is an example of a dynamic product platform using additive manufacturing for the production method. This was started as solving a problem to create aftermarket automotive key fobs. And it may seem silly, but there's a particular make and model of a vehicle that has a very large, massive key fob. And it's a model that's made today, so it's not something that has been around for a long time. And so when they launched this vehicle and had this key fob, we found that there are folks that were unhappy with it. So we wanted to solve the problem. I had this vehicle. I wanted to solve the problem for myself. And we challenged ourselves with the idea of being able to design and manufacture in mass scale key fob housings that would make the OEM fob smaller. So we set out to do that. And what started out as a sort of an interesting study transitioned into a separate business that's focused on aftermarket automotive components. We started with one particular design of a key fob. And as we were taking that to the market to get feedback, we found that consumers had different preferences for the shape and size and design of the fobs. So ultimately, we developed a series of tens of thousands of SKUs that represent these products so that we can essentially manufacture parts on demand that are tailored to specific individuals. We're at the place today where all the designs are digitally created. We create a master design, and then we've got a software tool that can iterate that design automatically so that we can create thousands or tens of thousands of derivatives from that without even touching a computer. So this has been an interesting example for us of actually having a problem, deploying additive manufacturing, and then realizing the real-time benefits of iterating on demand, taking customer feedback. And we're in a place today where we have several different products that are sold by Threedom. Everything from customized automotive handles. This would be an example of a replacement handle that's used on the exterior of the vehicle. It's got specific textures, and we've got different designs with different textures. We've got dash components that we've developed also with different textures. And the whole idea is being able to speak to the individual that has the vehicle, that's passionate about customization, and being able to do that on demand In traditional manufacturing, as that video indicated, you cut one tool and you make a million of the same part. In this case, we can create one design and then automatically generate tens of thousands of derivatives of that, where we only manufacture one forever. But that's not an issue because we're doing everything digitally. We're not locked into a particular asset or capital investment that we've made. So this has allowed us to develop solutions that in some cases wouldn't have been possible with traditional methods like molding, and allowed us to develop a niche solution to capture more market share across different products. So we serve both transformational and incremental applications. In our business, for DI Labs, about 85% of our applications are either batch or serial production. So a small portion of our business is utilized for prototyping. And so we're at the place where additive manufacturing is a real production resource. And in order to leverage it for that, it's really important to understand the advantages with additive manufacturing and then establish a strategy. If I often think if I can injection mold a part, if it's easily injection moldable with an open and closed tool, then that's the way to produce it. But if we're looking at a solution that doesn't exist or cannot be manufactured with traditional methods, additive manufacturing is an ideal resource because we have so much flexibility. It's extraordinarily responsive. We can go from design to solution in a period of days rather than weeks or months. So it is opening the door for rapid innovation in ways that wouldn't have been possible previously. So now I'll open the floor for questions and comments, if those exist. I imagine there are some questions out there.
Well, I find the whole concept extremely fascinating, to be honest with you. I'm from the I'm from the process improvement and lean manufacturing, Six Sigma arena. And I find that what you're doing here is very, very interesting. I guess I haven't really understood the terminology before about what additive manufacturing meant, but that chart that you had at the very beginning, delineating between molding, machining, and additive manufacturing was very informative and cleared it right up for me on figuring out it's a place where it belongs. Let's put it that way. So I enjoyed your presentation very much.
I appreciate the feedback, Scott. You know, I can imagine myself in your shoes and we experience this with some of the challenges of driving lean optimization in an organization and having to do that with traditional tools. Additive is such a great resource for that. It'd be neat to see how that can help change your role in your organization.
Well, from my perspective is that I do a lot of data collection.
Okay.
And I think that your fixturing concepts of being able to sit down and say, let's get something together, and being something to do that is where I kind of go. That seems like a very viable option for me to investigate some more about it.
You know, it's neat too. There are actually tools out there that if you're fixturing for an assembly, for example, you can take the 3D model or design for the assembly that you're fixturing, and there are tools that will automatically design the fixture for that so that it's essentially a hands-off operation, eliminating that bottleneck. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to chat with you.
Well, yeah. I'd love to do that.
Thank you for your comments and input.
Hey, Carl, this is Tim. Again, thanks for all this. And I think one of the big eye-opening things for me was to see like all the examples throughout the product life cycle. I mean, it's easy to imagine prototyping stuff, and I think a lot of us who have experience, with like desktop 3D printing of, um, you know, made a part to fix something around the house, right? So the experience at the other end of the life cycle where things are breaking down, or just need maintenance. But then, yeah, I hadn't sort of connected those 2 points. So thanks for sharing that. That was really eye-opening to me. But my question is back to sort of when you outline the differences between just 3D printing and what, sort of what that additive manufacturing, and part of it was like the control and consistency. And I'm just generally curious, like, are there for and how you're right, all the environmental points that you try and control, right, and et cetera, to get that consistency. Is that pretty well understood, or is that like a kind of dynamic space? Are you like just is the industry still sort of learning as you go? Like, oh, hey, today the whatever barometer was different, and these parts are coming out better.
There are a lot of dead bodies out there, as they say, not to be morbid, but lot of learning lessons. We started additive manufacturing at this scale with the intent for full scale production in 2017. In that first year, there was just a ton of learning lessons, painful experiences because of just what you said, just learning on the fly. And I think the industry, even today, while it's come a long way, I'd say that the majority of the industry is working on prototyping, where consistency and quality aren't the target yet. So we're still learning today. In some cases, we're operating equipment from companies like HP, for example, and we're providing them with real-time feedback for what we're learning that they may not have experienced in the development cycle for that equipment. So there's very much real-time learning occurring, and a lot of the rules are being written today.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. I would imagine yeah. I would imagine it's maybe very frustrating at times, but maybe part of what makes it exciting too. To
Yes,
be
and some
part
days
of
it's
like
both.
the evolution and the definition of what's going on in the industry.
It is exciting and frustrating sometimes at the same time. And it sounds like you must have a machine at home and do some tinkering yourself, so I'm sure you can appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, I myself just, my brother ended up getting a 3D printer, and we've been messing around with it quite a bit, and my brother's doing a great job of making all sorts of scrap parts while we're trying to develop something. Um, but when you were talking about the lettuce baskets or whatever you called them, um, that that brought me into the idea of like the statistical design of experiments. And I've got a master's degree in statistics, and being able to sit down and say that you've got the flexibility of coming up and changing, you've got four factors, but they all influence the design of some form or another, and that you're able to make those changes that fast without developing new tooling or anything like that. That when we talk next, that's where I'm going to bring that up and talk about that quite a bit too. So
I can't wait.
it's fascinating.
I can't wait. I love where you're headed, and with your background in statistics, and I can't wait to have that conversation. So I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I ask one other thing if we have time?
We do.
All right. I'm thinking back to the medical device example. And I'm wondering if there's any more you could share about sort of that, the I'm trying to remember how you phrased it. Sounded like there was some bias amongst, was it the doctors, like between a part that felt or appeared mass produced versus appeared like a prototype? Am I getting the details
Yes.
right? Like I'm really curious about that. Um, the influence that had on, yeah, their perception of the product and the feedback that you got and how that influenced the process.
That's a great question, Tim. I appreciate it. It was something that wasn't expected going into it, although going through it became obvious. And the feedback that we had is that, especially in an operation or surgical type environment where everything is so critical, if you go into it with a product that looks like it's a prototype or has been 3D printed, the idea is that it isn't probably going to work because it wasn't created with the exacting standards that our normal devices are produced with. And so that's the common challenge. In a lot of cases, medical device firms will transition sooner to an injection molding manufacturing method to try and offset some of that risk. But we've discovered that through this process, in fact, the physicians in most cases don't know that these parts are additively produced. They, in a lot of cases, think that they're injection molded. So that takes their focus away from their being looking for issues with the device and focused on the operation so that they can get real feedback rather than, as I put it, false negatives.
Mm-hmm. And do they know that they're working with a new product or that it's something that is being tested and evaluated?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, so the clinical trials are highly controlled, so they're
It is
aware
a
as well as the patient is.
Nice.
And it's sort of been neat in that I didn't share in the slide, but the other use case for additive in that scenario is that they are doing producing CT scans of the patient's heart. And then we're taking that heart shape and geometry and we're producing that in a material that behaves like tissue. So we produce the heart for them and they're actually able to install the heart valve and a recreation, an anatomical true recreation of the patient's heart to make sure that the heart valve is sized appropriately and they're familiar with the operation before actually performing the operation, which is just another example of a game changer with this technology.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you ever see the original RoboCop?
Yes.
You choose the heart.
Love it. Well, we've got a few more minutes allocated for the discussion. I'm happy to answer other questions or have an open discussion. And if there aren't any, then we can terminate this. And
Well, how can we get in touch with each other here later on? I guess I'm not sure about your contact information or anything yet.
Scott, I have yours. So
Okay.
I'll reach out
All right.
to you, and Carolyn may have an approach to share my contact information as well. So I'll shut up for a second.
Hi there. I will send out an email to all the individuals that registered, and I will include your contact information. So, and along with the video, and I do apologize, the very first few minutes of the video didn't take. Once I realized that, we got it rolling, but so we might be missing a little bit at the beginning, but I will share that as well.
Thank you. Well, Scott, Tim, thank you for hanging out and for your comments and questions. Neat to meet you virtually, so to speak, and happy to chat with you after the fact if there's any questions or if there's anything you want to dig deeper into.
Look forward to it.
Very much.
Right. Well,
Thank you,
thank you,
Carolyn.
everyone. We will, like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to me and I will share all the information I have with you first. But we really appreciate you participating in this webinar with us, Carl. It was very informative.
Thank you. A lot of fun. Thanks for the
All right.
time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.